Mufti Mudasir to come over and say a few words about his books, Aatash-e Toor and annotated Urdu translation of Deewan-e Ghani and Yusuf's Fragrance and English translation of Mahmud Gami. Professor Mudasir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tasneem, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Nilufar Khan, Dean Academic Affairs, Professor Farooq Masoodi, Head of the Department, Professor Ifat Makbul, Professor Nusrat, professors from other departments, dignitaries from administration, scholars, students, and friends. It gives me immense pleasure, and in fact, it is a moment of great honor for me to be standing in front of you. And great, if any labor, if it is acknowledged and appreciated, gives you joy. But if it is a labor of love, then the joy is really very, very great. And I won't be saying much about the importance and value of translation, which has already been said by Professor Ifat and Professor Nusrat. I would straight away go to the two books about which I have to speak. The first one is Aatash-e Toor. It is the Urdu translation of Deewan-e Gani, and the other is Yusuf's Fragrance, which is selections from the Kulliyat of Mahmud Gami. Now, for those of you who do not know who Gani was actually an icon, a celebrity even during his lifetime. And my love of Ghani's poetry goes back to around about 2004 and 5 when I first started reading him. And I was immediately struck by his poetic genius, his poetic versatility. And when I started reading him more and more, I discovered that he has great fans. In fact, he has influenced many generations of Urdu and Persian poets. I discovered Mir Taki Mir saying this verse about Gani. Kuch gada shair nahi hu mir main, tha mera sare mashq Deewan-e Ghani. Which means that, oh, Mir, I am not a poet of mean credentials because I have honed my skills on the Deewan of Gani. Which means that I have practiced the art of poetry by keeping Deewan of Gani in front of me and trying to emulate his poetic craft. But no one actually speaks of Gani so highly as Iqbal. And this was a great revelation to me when I studied Iqbal and I came across what he has to say about Gani's genius and his contribution. Look at his poem Mashriq, where he talks about Gani's faqr and istighna. He gives us that very famous anecdote about Gani, that he would always keep his door closed, locked, when he was inside the home. But he would leave that door open when he was out, contrary to what other people do who actually lock their doors when they are out of their houses. So when he was asked, why do we do this? He said, I am the only treasure in my house. So if I am not in my house, there is no fear of anything being stolen from my house. And then in Javed Nama, he talks about very other things, and he includes the spirit of Gani, and really pays a great tribute to Gani's genius. He also uses Gani's verses as tazmeen. Tazmeen is a poetic device by means of which a poet actually uses a misra or a full couplet of another poet in his poetry. In Bangidra, you'll come across a poem, कभी ये नौजवान मुस्लिम तदब्बुर भी किया तूने वो क्या गर्दूं था तू जिसका एक टूटा हुआ तारा. If you look at the maqta of this nazm, the last couplet, غنی روز سیاه پیرکن آن را تماشا کن که نور دید اش روشن کرد چشم زلیخا را. He uses this because he builds up a context and concludes his poem with this verse of Gani. Why does he do it? Because the theme of the poem is that there is a rise of the Western civilization because of the scientific revolution, the revolution of knowledge, but at the same time there is a decadence in Islamic civilizations. So Iqbal's idea is that the knowledge which was which the Muslim civilization had cherished for centuries together, now they have lost it, and now it has gone to the West. And he uses many verses before finally coming to this Maqta of Gani. गंवारी हमने जो असलाफ से मीरास पाई थी सुरैया से ज़मीन पर आसमां ने हमको दे मारा हुकूमत का तो क्या रोना कि वो एक आरज़ी शय थी नहीं जहाँ में आईने मुसल्लम से कोई चारा. I don't regret the loss of power, which is something that comes and goes. मगर वो इल्म के मोती किताबें अपने आबा की जो देखे उनको यूरोप में दिल होता है सी पारा. I regret the books that we have lost and that those are now to be found in various libraries of Europe. Then he ends with the verse of Gani. Gani ruze siyahe pirikan an ratamashakun. Gani, look at the darkened days of the old men of Canaan. The old men of Canaan is, of course, Yaqub. Why have his days turned dark? Ki noore deed ash roshan kar chashme Zulaykha. Because the light from his eyes has departed and it is now illumining the eyes of Zulaykha. Now, if you know the story of Yusuf and Yaqub, how Yaqub lost his son and wept miserably for years until he lost his eyesight. Now, Gani is saying that look at what happened to Yaqub. Yaqub has lost his eyesight, and that eyesight, that light of the eyes, it is now illumining those of Zulaykha because Yusuf is trapped in Zulaykha's house. Zulaykha has fallen madly in love with him and all that, we know that. But look at how Iqbal uses this, that something that was there with the Muslim societies, Islamic civilization has now gone and now it is illumining the European world. And look at the beauty of Ghani's verse. He's using the word Noor-e Deeda. And this is one of the remarkable qualities of Ghani's verse, Ghani's poetry, that he can use the same word and play on the meaning of the word in such a way, bring into play both the literal as well as the figurative meaning of the word. Now look at this word Noor-e Deeda. Noor-e Deeda literally means the light of eyesight, but figuratively it means a child. So the verse actually brings into play both meanings of Noor-e Deeda. It means both the eyesight as well as a child. Okay, so then this love of Gani led me to try to translate him into English, which was published as The Captured Gazelle in 2013, and it was a Penguin classic. And we translated around, I think, 1/4, along with my co-translator and colleague, Professor Nusrat. We translated about 1/4 of total of Ghani's Deewan. Okay, and the book was titled The Captured Gazelle. Why was it titled Captured Gazelle? Because the word, the idea is taken from one of the verses of Ghani. هر لحظه از گوشه خاطر سرجستن دارد مانع تازه غزالی است که بستن دارد. He actually refers to the evasiveness of a poetic thought. A fresh poetic idea is like a gazelle who is all the time looking to escape from the mind's corner and therefore needs to be captured. Therefore, the captured gazelle. And along with the comprehensive introduction, and the book also has, Roman transliteration and translation and some endnotes. It has ghazals, it has rubayats, and it has masnavis as well. Now coming to Aatash-e Toor, strange as it might sound, but it was true that nobody had translated Gani into Urdu. I don't know the reason, but nobody had actually tried tried to translate Ghani's Deewan into Urdu. So I thought that I must translate him into Urdu as well. While translating him into Urdu, I realized that he's a difficult poet, and many of the verses, in fact, most of the verses are not very clear if they are not explained further. So what I did is that I added notes, explanatory notes to the verses as well. So the book now we have Aatash-e Toor. It has an introduction. It has the Farsi matan, which is the Persian text. It has Urdu translation, and it also has explanatory notes at the footnote. Now, I can't say a lot about it. Let me say only a few things. Why do I think that Gani, what's so remarkable about Gani? His maan afreeni and his nazuk khayali. اردو سے واقف لوگ جانتے ہیں کہ مان آفرینی کس کو کہتے ہیں. مان آفرینی غالب نے کہا تھا کہ شاعری مان آفرینی ہوتی ہے. اٹس اے کریشن آف فریش میننگس, نیو میننگس. اینڈ let us look at some examples of what this مان آفرینی is. استعاروں کی مدد سے, تشبیہات کی مدد سے نئے معنی پیدا کرنا, اور خصوصاً تمثیل, ایگزمپلیفیکیشن, اس میں تو غنی نے ایک کمال پیدا کر دیا تھا. اس شعر کو آپ دیکھیے. نیست حسن بے بقا شائستہ دل بستگی, با چراغ برق یک پروانہ ہمراہی نہ کر. حسن ناپائیدار دل لگی کے قابل نہیں ہوتا, بجلی کی کڑک کسی پروانے کو مائل نہیں کرتی. And if you look at the depth of this the meaning of this verse. اور ذرا اس شعر کو دیکھیے. پیروے ما شو کہ ہم چون خام در راہ سخن, پی بمانا می توان بردن ز نقش پای ما. شعر و سخن کی راہ میں میرے مرید بن جاؤ, قلم کی طرح میرے نقش قدم تمہیں معنی تک پہنچا دیں گے. یعنی قلم لکھتے ہوئے اپنے نقش قدم یعنی لکھائی پیچھے چھوڑ دیتا ہے. جس طرح کسی کے نقش قدم پر چل کر اس تک پہنچا جا سکتا ہے, اسی طرح قلم کی لکھائی معنی تک پہنچا دیتی ہے. Now I will just recite a few more verses so that you get an idea of the style and themes of Gani. This is a ghazal. I will read a few verses from this. یہ غزل اصل میں غنی کے جو ان کا جو استغنا تھا, فقر جو تھا, جس کی تعریف اقبال کرتے ہیں, یہ اس کی دلیل ہے, اس استغنا کی اور دنیا سے بے رغبتی کی دلیل ہے. از روی ماه سیاهی به نور ما نرفت, نیامده است به کار توان خویش مرا. چاند کی روشنی اس کے چہرے سے سیاہی دور نہیں کرتی, میرا کمال بھی میرے کسی کام نہیں آتا. کسی به پرسش احوال من نمی آید, بغیر خندکی آید به حال خویش مرا. ایک ہنسی کو چھوڑ کر جو مجھے اپنے حال پہ آتی ہے, پرسش احوال کے لیے میرے پاس کوئی نہیں آتا. ز غنچه تکیه چو شبنم به زیر سر نهم, که به زبانش پر هست بال خویش مرا. شبنم کی طرح میں گنچے کو تکیہ بنا کر اس پر سر نہیں رکھتا, میرا اپنا ہی بازو پروں سے کے سراہنے سے بہتر ہے. And the last one. به گلشن دگری چشم من نمی افتد, گل مراد شگفت از سفال خویش مرا. میری نگاہ اوروں کے گلشن کی طرف نہیں اٹھتی, میری آرزوؤں کا پھول صرف اپنی مٹی کے پیالے میں اگتا ہے. I will just take two more minutes on Gani, because this is a rubai which some of the rubais that I like, I will read a couple of them. اے صاحب ہوش اے عیب می پوش بپوش, بی ہوشی مردم بتہ ہوش بپوش. بینی ز کسی اگر بدی یا شنوی, در پردے چشم و پردے گوش بپوش. اے صاحب ہوش میں نوشوں کے عیبوں کو چھپا, اے صاحب ہوش میں نوشوں کے عیبوں کو چھپا. لوگوں کی بے ہوشی کو ہوش کی تہ میں چھپا. اگر تو کسی کی بدی دیکھے یا سنے, آنکھ یا کان کے پردے میں اس کو چھپا. پیوست به کنج انزوا در سفرم, با آنکه نشسته‌ام ز پا در سفرم. هرچند مسافتم بود یک کف دست, عمریست که همچو آسیا در سفرم. میں گوشه خلوت میں بھی سفر میں ہی رہا, ایک جگہ بیٹھ کر بھی مسافر ہی رہا. گرچہ میرے سفر کی مسافت بقدر ہاتھ ہی رہی, چکی کی طرح میں ساری عمر سفر میں ہی رہا. And this is the last one. بر غم زدگان اہل جهان می خندند, از جوش فرح به صد دهان می خندند. در بزم طرب به سان مینای شراب, ما می گرییم و دیگران می خندند. دکھ کے معروف دنیا کے لوگ ہنستے ہیں, कह कहे मारते हुए सैकड़ों मुंह हंसते हैं, शराब के मीना की तरह ऐश की महफिल में हम रोते हैं और बाकी सब हंसते हैं. So this was Aatash-e Toor. Now let me say a few things about the other book, which is Yusuf's Fragrance. This is, of course, a book that was published last year. And Mahmud Gami is, of course, one of the pioneers. As Shok Sarwaz himself said written somewhere, that Gani is perhaps the most popular poet in the last 200 years. We don't realize it now, but he was very, very popular a few years back. And he lived from 1765 to 1855. Had a long life, and he has a remarkable contribution to Kashmiri because he introduced Persian genres like ghazal, naat, masnavi, and nazm into Kashmiri. And therefore he is responsible for some kind of revivification, or you can say revival of Kashmiri poetry. There was a German Orientalist called Karl Friedrich Buchholz, who was in Kashmir in around 1890s. And Gami was so popular at that time that he decided to translate Gami's Yusuf Zulaykha into Latin. And that is for the first time Gani was translated not into English or Urdu but into Latin by Friedrich Buchholz. And his range is quite remarkable because he wrote in diverse genres, in Nazm, Ghazal, Watsum, and Basnavi. Now, I don't really have time to discuss much. I will just briefly sum up what I have done in the book. The book has a comprehensive introduction of about 69 pages. And it is, in this book, I discuss some things. I think the most important things that I discuss in the book are Gami's philosophy of love, his philosophy of life and death, and in fact, before that, I discuss the influence of Persian on Kashmiri, which is a very important thing, just needs a lot of scholar attention. And here I take issue with those scholars like Abdullah al-Azad, who have regretted what they call the baneful influence of Persian on Kashmiri. Contrary to their view, I argue that Persian actually enriched Kashmiri in many ways. In fact, Kashmiri, contemporary Kashmiri, today's Kashmiri would not have been Kashmiri without this Persian influence. And very consciously, Mahmud Gami models himself on the great Persian masters like Jami, Nizami. He calls himself the Persian Jami, the Kashmiri Jami, and Kashmiri Nizami. And there is an anecdote which really does not have any no truth about it, that Gami deliberately chose this takhallus Gami because some people from the city used to deride him, call him a villager, a Gami, and saying that he can't write poetry. So he adopted this, as a mark of pride, saying that I'm a Gami and I will use it as takhallus. This does not seem to be true because his poetry suggests that he wanted a takhallus which would rhyme with Nizami and Jami, hence Gani. So, apart from this, I talk about the indigenous Kashmiri genre of poetry, which is Watsum. And I discuss that in detail, what are the important things that one should keep in mind about its historical evolution, and then how Gami actually uses this Watsum. And then there is a discussion on 6 Masnavis, which I am doing in this, which I have translated in this book, which is Khusro Shirin, Yusuf Zulaykha, Laila Majnoon, Sheikh Sanan, Mansoor Nama, and Pahal Nama. These are all actually adaptations from Persian, but he imparts his Kashmiri local color. I don't have time to explain that, so I will skip that. Just to mention one story that he takes from Farid ibn Attar is Sheikh Sanan. There's a very famous story about in Mantiq al-Taib of a Muslim servant falling in love with a Christian girl, and then all that, and finally being delivered from that. Finally, he's redeemed, and he uses the story. And in fact, this story is actually a mystical story, because the theme is how ishq majazi can lead to ishq hakiki. But what Gani does is that he drops Christian girl and he says Hindu girl. And there's a beautiful song here, which begins like this. Van chane Sheikh Sanhan tra parhez gariye, ay hinzi mer minzi zar bozak na. Bremch dunya kam ashik kul beam girl yem samsariye, gam kastam roz astam chamne chani ma. So you can find this in the I will just read just one stanza. I know I'm running out of time. I will just read one stanza from this translation, which is this is actually a poem called Kalwa, which translates as wine server. In Sufism, wine stands for divine intoxication, and wine servant stands for the divine beloved. Kalpan vandha tas kalavalas, thala ikinyunam hes hai, mas cheveres bal. Atra khot mush chui katrevis pyalas, mai marifat chavanas hai, pyala mala mal. Yan yer vat navnas yat halas, tanaka and travnas hai, chus kya gosmalal. Khaf kornam thap layas nalas, pat tur laras hai, suit nari nal. Lokcha rom kah sambalas, nagrai tambalavnas hai, ramavai himal. Sanyas beautum harmok balas, dunyahas pernavnas hai, asvin bo gopal. Mushtaq ashak at jamalas, lashak meel yaras hai, gai gar ke visal. Lubi kon ashik at khato khalas, shubbi jan kyachis hai, zulf kokal zal. I will not read the entire thing, now I will try to read the translation. Would that I could lay down my head for that wine server, that thief of wits, who beguiled me with a single trick and made me drunk on a heady wine. His earthen cup, more fragrant than the perfume, infuses sweetness into me. He pours the wine of Gnosis into the cup, and I drink it up. My love has deserted me, making me heart forlorn. I wonder why, if only I knew what has annoyed him. He has snatched my felicity. Could I grab him by his collar, or follow his footsteps wherever he goes, or throw my arms around his neck? My youth has gone waste, it's past redemption. My Nagrai, that tantalizer, enticed and kept his Himal teetering on the edge. Thank you very much.